Juliana thumbed through the magazine that she had been reading in the back seat of the family car. On the final page, she found what she had wanted. It was a listing of fun magic paraphernalia to send away for her. Juliana loved magic. She loved to astonish her friends. She was just starting to fill out the order form when her mother asked if she was hungry. Juliana nodded. Yeah, I could go for something to eat. Well, I could sure use a break, her dad chimed in from the driver's seat. I need to stretch my legs. Yeah, it was a long drive from Yosemite to Chicago, and they still had hours to go. Now, as they looked for the next exit, they passed a billboard that announced, "See the amazing alien beast at River Run Diner and Trading Post. Next exit." Oh, can we stop there? Juliana pleaded. Her parents glanced at each other. Then her father flipped on the turn signal. Well, at least if the food's lousy, we can have a good laugh at the amazing alien beast, he said, chuckling as he eased the car towards the next exit ramp. The diner was shaped like a huge stone teepee with glass doors. Two smaller teepees stood on either side. The one on the right was a trading post, while the one on the left was a performance area with a sign outside listing all the show times. Oh, looks like we're just in time for the last show, Dad said, as he ushered Juliana and her mom towards the building. Oh, yeah, afterwards we can go in there and get a bite to eat. The inside walls were draped with a velvety red curtain, and several rows of chairs faced a small stage. Have a seat where you like, folks, offered a small red-headed man in jeans and a faded cowboy shirt. Alonzo the Great he'll be appearing at any minute. Juliana noticed that the man emphasized the word appearing. She had visions of a mysterious man in a black cape materializing right before them in a puff of smoke. Sitting in front with her parents, she looked around. There were only 5 other people in the audience, and the lights then suddenly dimmed, and Juliana heard her mother gasp. A costumed figure was standing in the spotlight just as she had imagined, seemingly out of thin air. The couple behind her applauded politely, and the man on stage bowed. "Thank you," he said, with slightly a distorted voice. "Great makeup job," Juliana's dad whispered. "He looks positively out of this world," Mom agreed. With a protruding canine snout and elongated ears that arched upward, the man was made up to look like some kind of wolf being. His eyes were pale gold, and when he smiled, he showed a set of slightly pointed teeth. A soft coat of fine gray fur covered his face. "I am but a visitor in your dimension," the actor began dramatically. "I'm here in your world. Oh, some say that my magic powers seem to be from some other place, but I can just assure you that I'm merely a performer, a magician and nothing more." And with that, he pulled a large bouquet of fake flowers from his sleeve, which brought a smattering of applause. Juliana raised an eyebrow. Oh, God, this is boring, she thought. You all are very kind, the magician said, and then turned his gaze directly on Juliana, as if reading her mind. But I have a feeling that you might like to see something more spectacular. Well, so be it. He moved gracefully to a table, and on it were a few items: a colorful ball, a framed photo, a book, and a small bowl of water with a goldfish circling lazily around inside of it. With a flourish, he passed his paw over the table and wiggled his fingers, each of which ended in a curved, tapered claw. Must be some kind of gloves, Juliana thought to herself. I don't think anybody could grow nails like that. Watch carefully, my friends, he advised in his peculiar rhythmic tone, and you will be amazed. Suddenly, Juliana became aware of an unusual sweet scent in the air, and she forgot about everything except what was happening on that small stage. But there, right before her eyes, the items were fading from view one by one, very slowly. First, the ball disappeared, and then the photo, and the book followed. Finally, the fishbowl vanished, leaving the goldfish swimming in mid-air, and then it too disappeared. No one made a sound. Please, my friend, the magician said, gesturing to a heavy-set man sitting near the door. Come and see for yourself what your eyes are seeing. You are not being deceived. The man stood and lumbered onto the stage. He ran his hands over the table and then looked closely at the floor. He looked underneath for trapdoors and mirrors, but I'll be darned, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. They sure are gone. How did you do that? The magician smiled, exposing sharp teeth. I assure you, he said, the items are all residing safely in my own dimension. In fact, he added with a wink, at this very moment, there is an audience there that is just as surprised to see the objects appear as you were to see them disappear. Everyone started to laugh, but Juliana felt a creepy tingle down to her toes. There was something very strange about this magician. He was now raising his hand with a flourish and giving a short bow to a lot of enthusiastic applause. Thank you, one and all, the magician said grandly. Okay, folks, the red-haired man in jeans called from where he stood near the door. Now the griddle is hot and the trading post is open. We'd be quite pleased if you would join us, but first, he added, motioning towards the stage, you're welcome to take a look around. Juliana, who had turned with the rest of the audience to go listen to the man, looked back to the stage only to find that the magician had vanished. Oh, that's quite an act, her dad said as they walked towards the diner. Oh, the bit about that other dimension is a little bit weird. Still, I wonder why the guy is working in this little out-of-the-way place. It seems as if he could do so much better. In the diner, Juliana picked at her tuna sandwich. She was no longer hungry. All she could think about was the magician's act. I will never be that good of a magician, she thought, unless... Excuse me, she said to her parents. I'm going to go find the restroom, okay? And then, well, I'll be back, but I think it's outside. Okay. But once outside, Juliana headed away from the ladies' room and hurried to the performance area. She ducked inside. Now that it was empty, the place had an extra eerie quality about it. Juliana took a deep breath. She could still smell the sweet scent that she had detected earlier. Walking around the room, she ran her fingers along the crimson curtain. I wonder where this goes, she mumbled, as she parted the curtain and saw a tiny passageway behind it. A light shone from a small room at the end. Creeping quietly along the passageway, she reached the lighted area and peeked in just in time to see the magician spraying himself from head to toe with a dull red fluid that came from a crystal container. Instantly, the familiar sweet scent that she'd smelled in the performance area flooded the room. The magician set the container on a low shelf and then simply faded away. For a moment, Juliana wrestled with a sudden urge that came over her. She had to have that spray. Quickly stepping into the room, she tiptoed around and she went to where the container was and had just laid her hand on it when, "What are you doing here?" She heard a voice. It was a small red-headed man. He was the one who had announced the performance. Juliana turned to face him. I was looking for the bathrooms, she said finally. Her thoughts were spinning. Could she see? Did he see her and what she was up to? The man stared at her for a good long moment, and then he said, "I don't like people snooping around in my place. Now the restroom is over there. Now get out of here." "I'm sorry," she replied, smiling weakly. Then, as the man turned away, she slipped the crystal container into her pocket and ran back to the diner. "Wow!" Jake Taylor exclaimed when Juliana made a glass of orange juice disappear for several of her friends at school. They hadn't believed that she could really do it, but the small crystal container tucked secretly in her palm, why, that was all that Juliana needed. She simply would have to just wave her hand over the juice and poof! "How did you do that?" Jake asked, obviously impressed. "Oh," Juliana answered coyly, "it's just something that I picked up from a colleague while I was out on the road." "Does it work on people?" Jake's sister Karen asked. "Well, I suppose," Juliana responded thoughtfully. She remembered watching as the magician faded from sight. Well, maybe we'll show you that tomorrow, she said. Now, later that night, Juliana paced sleeplessly in her room. It would be the best trick in the whole world, she muttered under her breath. Imagine me actually making a live person vanish into thin air. She picked up the crystal container and then set it back down on her dresser once again. But what if it really doesn't work? Or what if it really does work? I don't even know, she thought. She saw the magician make things disappear, but she didn't really see him make things reappear. How could she be certain that she could bring a person back? Suddenly, Juliana heard her dog scratching at the door. Okay, come on in, Jericho, she said, letting her small terrier into the room. He immediately scurried after a tiny cricket that had been hiding in the shadows in the corner of the room. The insect leaped to safety from the windowsill. All at once, Juliana had such an incredible idea. I'll test it on that cricket, she said. And she directed the vial in the direction of the little creature spraying. Well, unfortunately, it was precisely at that same moment that her dog decided to jump up right into the spray, and the red liquid covered Jericho's dark brown fur. Oh no! Juliana cried, sweeping Jericho up in her arms. But as she held him, Jericho slowly faded, and then all at once he was gone. What have I done? She sobbed, and then she threw herself on her bed and cried herself to sleep. When she woke in the morning, Juliana rubbed her red, swollen eyes. It's all my fault, she whimpered, gazing sadly at the empty dog bed in the corner of her room. She started to turn away, but she stopped when she noticed a dim shadow in the center of Jericho's blanket. As she watched, the shadow slowly took shape until Jericho reappeared. Oh, you're back, Jericho! She exclaimed, hugging the bewildered dog. The effect must wear off on living things. The dog gave her a very confused glance and then curled up on the floor and began to lick its fur. Juliana picked up the container. I've got to do this before I lose my nerve. Here it goes, she said, and with a smile, she directed the spray toward herself. For a moment, she felt sick to her stomach, like she did when she rolled the whirligig at the fair, and everything around her was hazy and hot. She gasped for air and tried to focus her eyes. Slowly, a strange room began to come into view. She was on some sort of raised platform, and there was a spotlight shining down on her. Oh, she tried to see in the shadows beyond. There were lots and lots of people sitting in rows of seats, and they were all screaming. She took a step towards them. A small child in the front row began to cry, but it wasn't like any child she had ever seen before. In her vision, she saw that the little boy had wolf-like features, yellow eyes, and a mouthful of tiny sharp teeth. Soft gray fur covered his face and his hands. What is going on here? She shrieked. Where am I? All at once, someone gripped her firmly by the arm and tugged her to the curtained room near the stage. I knew this would happen. a wolf-like man said in a distorted voice. Juliana stared in astonishment. "You're the magician from the diner," she whimpered. "What is this place? What are those creatures?" "They acted like I was some kind of monster. I want to go home." "I'm afraid this was going to happen," he said, ignoring her. "When I returned to your dimension and found the bottle missing, I knew that someone had stole the potion. I just knew it. It would only be a matter of time." And then, when the objects started coming through, well, I knew for certain. Now we're just going to have to find something to do with you. How long does it take before this stuff wears off? It doesn't wear off. "That's not true," she shouted. "I tried it on my dog and he came back. I saw it. I saw it happen." "Listen carefully. That potion is a well-protected secret used by magicians in my dimension. We amaze audiences by making strange things appear before their eyes. Now, there are many dimensions to visit, but I chose yours. I can go back and forth as those of my kind can, but objects and other living things, including humans from your dimension, can only go one way. I cannot send you back." But my dog!" And then all of a sudden she looked at the magician's soft fur, glanced deeply into his golden wolf eyes, and realized the truth. He's like you, that's why. The potion works for you and for him because you're so much alike. Her shoulders shook with sobs as she understood what had happened. That she was now trapped in another dimension with no hope of ever going back to her own kind. The magician placed his paw on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he growled softly, "that you brought it on yourself. Still, we will find a place for you here. In fact, I think you will make a fine attraction. We can bill you as the amazing alien being at a little roadside house not too far from here. It's an out-of-the-way place and no one will ask questions. Oh yes, my dear, you will make a very fine roadside attraction. A very fine one indeed."